So often when we listen to somebody, we are starting to formulate in our mind what we're going to say.
Yeah.
Right? Don't do that. Let your mind just stay clear and focused only on what they're saying.
Welcome, everyone, to Kestra OutLoud, where we amplify the voice of the financial advisor. I am your host today, Maria Bethel, and I am here with my favorite co-host, don't tell the others, Austin Moon.
Thank you.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special guest in studio today for you. And there are literally so many accolades that we could use to introduce him that it was difficult to narrow down, but we definitely are going to do our best. You can hear him on CBS Radio Network, where he reaches 7 million listeners every week. He is author of 4 books, including the groundbreaking international bestseller, Talent is Overrated: What Really Separates World-Class Performers from Everybody Else. Today, we are thrilled to welcome our very special guest, Geoff Colvin. Welcome.
Beautifully done. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm writing that down in my memoir.
Geoff, we are so happy to have you on as a guest on our podcast. Like I was telling Maria, we're just so excited, did our homework, and
He said,
we've got a list of questions that were submitted from advisors, and we're dying to pick your brain and be able to get some of that brilliance out of you. So first question that we have from advisors, so much of what advisors do is about managing the emotions of their clients. So could you share some tips, some advice for advisors when there's extreme market volatility? How can they manage those client emotions? What are some advice you could give advisors?
It's so interesting to me that is a top question from the advisors, because in my view, that is becoming probably the way they add the greatest value nowadays, right? Because giving, the data, you don't need some person to give you the data, right? But you need someone to help you, especially with the emotional issues. The theorists see finance as pure math, which in theory it is. But in reality, this is highly emotional stuff for real human beings. So that's it. So how do they do it at a time of great volatility? There are so many things that I've learned from reading all the research on this. A few things stand out to me. First, a couple things not to say. And I mention them because it's so easy to say them. And in fact, even though I'm supposed to know this, I still make these mistakes. Don't say, calm down. That doesn't tell them anything. It doesn't do them any good at all. It just kind of makes them more worried.
Yeah.
Right? So don't say, calm down. Another thing not to say, and this is hard to remember, don't say, I understand. We all say that.
Yeah.
Right.
I still say that. Don't say, I understand. Because the truth is, most of the time, you don't really understand. That person has a personal situation that you can never fully know. Right. Don't try to tell them that you understand. What you can do is, first of all, ask them questions and listen carefully and actively. That's the term, active listening, meaning really listen to what they say. Listen to what they're conveying without saying it out loud, and then ask them questions about that. The first thing is just give them a chance to vent, to express what they're worried about, upset about, or whatever it is. Just let them do that and show that you've heard them. That's what they want, first of all. They just want to know that somebody heard them. After that, just make sure that you exude calm and reassurance. And I've seen this talking to people in the industry, advisors, financial advisors. If you can remain calm and collected, and then let them know that you've been through this before. Don't give them data so much. Tell them stories.
Yeah.
Tell them stories about your own experience going through this before, or the experience of someone else going through this before. Because we know that that will affect people much more deeply than giving them facts and figures.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. We heard a fantastic speaker yesterday who said one of the best ways you can get a client to love you is to gift them active listening.
Yes.
So she presented it as you're giving them a gift.
Yes.
When you're doing listening. So I think that parallels great with exactly what you just said.
Absolutely, and that's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
It is giving them a gift.
It is.
That's what they want.
It is. And you don't have to be a therapist, a licensed therapist as an advisor to be able to listen. Like you said, you're saying ask questions. And that shows that you care, that you have concern for them. You don't have to have answers per se, but listening is gifting them something special.
It really is. And one of the hard parts about, it doesn't sound hard, right? It sounds
Right.
pretty easy. One of the hard parts is that so often when we listen to somebody, we are starting to formulate in our mind what we're going to say,
Yeah.
right? Don't do that. Let your mind just stay clear and focused only on what they're saying. And that's kind of a leap of faith because you don't know where it's going to take you. Just keep your mind clear and focus only on what they're saying. And they will feel that. They know then that you're doing it, and that's what they want.
Yeah, there's something special to be said about just honing in on exactly the person that you're in the room with.
Yes.
Even if there's 100 other people around, you can make them
Exactly
feel
right.
like they're the only person in the room.
That is it.
Yeah.
That is it. And, it sounds simple, but most people don't do it.
Yeah. Love that. So speaking of the asking questions and everything, I feel like the role of the financial advisor has changed significantly over the last 20 years, right?
Yes.
So can you explain to us how you think the role of the financial advisor has changed and shifted over the last couple of decades? And can you provide us a perspective from both the client lens and the advisor lens? How has it affected both sides of this coin?
Yeah. In general, I would say the role of the advisor has become much more important over the past 20 years. And the question is especially good, I think, because 20 years is a significant period. If we go back 20 years, we're talking about the beginning of 2000, right? We're talking about one of the most extreme moments in the history of investing over the past 80 years or something. And the reason this is so significant is the dot-com bust, the plunge that took place in 2000 and 2001 really frightened a lot of people, depending on where they were in their lives. It really spooked a lot of people into being wary of investing, being wary of the stock market in particular, almost permanently. They were scared off. It was like, well, I'm never going to take a chance like that. I don't want that to happen to me again. And so part of the advisor's job is to help people understand, what was back then, to help people understand that even though this incredible break in the market happened, you should still invest. And there were people who thought there was a generation of investors who were just lost. Well, that was up to the advisors, really, to help them understand that wasn't the case. Then you had, of course, a similar thing when the financial crisis hit about 10 years later, 8 or 9 years later. And so, again, it was a real challenge to the advisor to explain to people that these things happen, but you can still come out okay. And when I say that the advisor's role is more important, this is a service. I mean, people who get scared out of the market and don't invest, think of what they suffered as a result of that. Think of all they missed out on by not being in the market when they could have been. And then the other revolution, of course, was the internet and the data revolution.
Yeah.
So that suddenly all the data that you used to depend on an advisor to give you, if you knew what you were looking for, you could get it any place, and you could educate yourself more than ever before. And so the role of the advisor shifted to what you asked about earlier. It's now increasingly about dealing with the emotional needs, the human side of the equation. And that's a really big change. I mean, I've spoken to an awful lot of financial advisors over the years, and many of them have told me just what your questioner said. You know, look, I remember one of them saying, I spend most of my time now being a psychiatrist, right? That's what I have to do. And so it's different skills, you know, especially to people who've been in the business for a long time.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean-
Changing the way you're doing it.
Yeah, exactly. And one other factor that has happened is an awful lot of millennials assume that that Social Security won't be there when they retire. Right. They don't. It probably will be actually, but they just assume it's not going to be there.
Yeah.
They need help even more than people used to.
It's interesting. So I remember 10 years ago, there was this great fear. I've been doing this for 20 years. There's this great fear from financial advisors about the advancement of technology.
Right.
You know, robo-advisors were really launching and making this big marketing push and grabbing market share. And there's this fear from advisors that everything's going robo. I'm going to be out of a job.
Right.
But it's just like you're saying, it's almost the exact opposite. You talk about in your book about the advancement of technology and how much emphasis and value creation is from that human interaction and really connecting with people. And that's where that empathy comes from, where you can't get that from a robo-advisor. You know, how essential is that connectivity with the customer? Because, anyone can outsource to a robo-advisor, but there's no advice involved in that.
Right, right. And I have to say, you know, that the robo-advisors have a role to play. There's a lot of data you can get through those things, and there's a lot of stuff that a really interested, engaged investor can do, you know, putting in different scenarios, trying out this, that, you know, it does a lot of calculating and things for you. So that's, you know, I understand why these things have, you know, obviously they haven't taken over the business.
Right.
Right.
But they've attracted, you know, a lot of billions of dollars, and fine. But what those investors are going to find is the day's going to come when they got to talk to somebody.
Yep.
Right? It's because we're human beings. Mm-hmm. We just have to do. This is what we are hardwired to do, to want to do, and to value. And so it's not going to go away. And of course, as we were talking about, it does change the role of the advisor, because, you know, you can remember when part of that role was presenting data.
Right.
You know, having these nice books and these nice presentations and folders and stuff. Well, there's still some of that, but I know that a lot of them are finding that when the client walks in, they've got the books and the printouts. And,
That's so true. The tables have turned.
Right. So, fine. Then we'll focus on what they can't get except from the advisor.
Right.
Exactly.
Fantastic.
So that's a great segue into the next question, actually. So, what is your point of view on advisors adopting the modern technologies that we have at our fingertips today to augment the client experience, the client relationship, while still maintaining that deep human interaction?
Yeah. Yeah. I wholeheartedly advise people to embrace the technology. It's fantastic.
Right.
Right? Let's not pretend it doesn't exist. let's use it for what we can use it for. It's fantastic. You think of all the things you can do for the client easily, quickly, with the technology that you couldn't have done before.
Right.
You know, that you would have needed a computer the size of a room to do, and you didn't have that.
Yeah.
So embrace it all, but use it to show the client that you have insights, that you have ways of thinking that they never even thought of, right? The technology will do the data. You can, just this morning, I was looking at all the stock indexes from all the stock markets around the world in real time, all on one page that I could
That's
scroll
unreal.
up and down.
So
right?
unreal. Gosh.
It is. I mean, think of that.
Yeah.
And so that part's easy. Show the client that you have insights, that you have thoughts about this that they didn't know about. Because the fact is, the advisor does this full time. The advisor does this all day, every day.
Right.
The client does not. And, I would encourage clients to do all the research they want. Do all the looking into it they want. Because the more they do, the more they're going to have questions for the advisor. They'll never do as much as the advisor does. But they'll be a better client. And the advisor can do better things for them if they're knowledgeable.
Yeah, so it's actually better for a client to do a lot of research and
Yes.
formulate these questions and then
Yes.
bring it to the advisor, so the advisor can therefore act as the subject matter expert and explain the questions. So the advisor should be looking at the questions like a good thing and not a bad thing, that clients are researching this before they even come into the office.
Absolutely right.
Okay.
Absolutely right. Many years ago, there was a clothing retailer, the name of which escapes me, but you remember the slogan was, "Where an educated consumer is our best customer." Well, that had to do with knowing the prices of apparel, but it's equally true for advisors, right? An educated client is going to be your best client, I think.
Great.
Yeah, that's a great perspective.
I want to switch gears just a little bit and dive into your background and your work.
Yes.
You've had an amazingly successful career. Editor of a magazine, written best-selling books, moderated panels, interviewed royalty, keynote speeches in front of thousands of people. You've got one today in front of 600 or 700 people today. If you could pick one favorite career moment, what would it be?
Right. Of course, it's very tough.
Yeah.
It's very tough. And I don't know if I can do it, if I can choose one, but I can get close to one.
Okay.
And that is when somebody tells me that something I wrote or said was helpful to them in their own life, that it made a real difference in their own life. And that has happened a number of times. In the intro, you mentioned the talent is overrated book.
Yes.
That has been so rewarding to me, because I do hear from people who say the message of that book really changed their lives. Well, what more can I ask? Honestly, what more can I say? I mean, I was at an event, and the message of that book is, you can be a great performer without a natural gift. In fact, the research on this subject says natural gifts are way overrated and may not even exist. It's up to you. It is within your power. And lots of people tell me they've been really helped by that message. And separately, I was at an event not long ago where someone came up to me and said he'd heard me speak a year previously, and some things I had said had changed the way he did his job, which was as a manager actually in a city administration. And he said, it's now part of the way I work, and things are so much better. He said, you're in my office every day, whether you know it or not. Well, what more do I want?
Yeah.
Honestly.
So the one defining moment that you would say is that I was able to make an impact on somebody's life.
Yeah, that's it. That's really it.
That's beautiful.
You can't ask for anything more.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Definitely. I like that. I think in all of the accomplishments that Austin had listed out for you is that he forgot to mention that you graduated from Harvard University.
That's true.
True story. That's rather impressive.
Well, you know, a lot of people do it every year, but it was a great experience for me. I'll tell you that. It was a great, great experience for me because, I mean, I was born and raised in South Dakota. Then our family moved, and the last 3 years of high school we lived in Southern Illinois, also in a small town. And so for me, arriving at Harvard was like landing on another planet.
Wow.
It was a world I knew nothing about. And I loved it. It was a great, great experience, and I'm grateful for it still today.
Yeah.
Did you know then what your trajectory was going to be?
Not really, which is, of course, totally typical.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, you arrive at college, and you probably have some ideas.
Yeah.
But they're probably different by the time you graduate from college. So when I arrived at college, I thought, I didn't know what I was going to major in. I was thinking maybe classics, you know, ancient Greek and Latin literature and stuff like that, which I still am enormously interested in, and I still read those things and study them all the time. But I changed my mind and ended up majoring in economics, which obviously fits with what I've done, you know, my whole life. But you know, some years ago, I was interviewing on stage Ben Bernanke, the former chairman of the Fed, and we were in the green room ahead of time, and he and I were in the same class at Harvard, and both majored in economics, but we didn't know each other as students. But when we were sitting back there, I said, Ben, you know, you and I must have been sitting there in the same introductory economics class at the same time. And he said, no, actually we weren't, because he said, now quoting him, he said, when Ben, arrived at Harvard, I thought I was going to major in physics.
Really?
He said,
wow.
So I didn't take the introductory economics course until I was a sophomore. And yet, you know, once he changed his mind to economics, he went on and got a PhD and became chairman of the Federal Reserve.
So at one point, you were actually ahead of Ben Bernanke.
Yeah, that's right.
From an economic.
That's the point.
That's
here.
right. Just that 1 point. That's right. And it didn't last long. But that I hadn't even thought of that angle. But thank you for that, because I'll remember it.
That's the golden nugget and impact that you're going to leave on our guest, Geoff Colvin.
That's true. That is true.
Take that with you.
Yeah.
So we're going to wrap up today's show, which I don't even want to do because I'm having so much fun with you. I want to keep going all day. We'll wrap it up with this one final question.
Yes.
But if there was a highlight reel for Geoff Colvin's life, who and what would you want to be on it?
Well, that's impossible to answer. But if you really, look, I mean, if you're talking about my life, for heaven's sakes, I mean, I do believe that I was born and raised in absolutely the greatest place and the greatest time I could imagine. Which, I mean, it may sound odd to some people, but honestly, a little town in South Dakota at the time that I grew up there, I can't think of it was just wonderful. It was a great time and place to grow up, and I'm very grateful for it. I think it was a great thing for me. I mean, I'm not going to mention family members because I can't mention all of them. There are too many of them.
If you forget one, you're in trouble.
You forget when you're in trouble. That's exactly, it's like the Academy Award thank you speech. You're going to leave somebody out and you're going to be in trouble. But I am often struck by how lucky I think I've been. Born and raised in a great place and time with the world's greatest parents. Went to school in a great place. I've been able to do work that truly interests me, that I find engaging and interesting every single day. It's just unbelievable. It's luck that no one deserves, because why would you deserve anything when you're born? But it's been incredibly great, and I honestly, I'm grateful for it every day.
You've been on one incredible adventure, and I figure no matter who or what makes the highlight reel, it's going to be very long and very spectacular. We want to thank Geoff Colvin for being with us today. We hope to have you again in the future, and we wish you all the best, and especially for being ahead of Ben Bernanke, just even if it was for a moment. We'll see you next time.
My great pleasure. Thank
you.
Thank you.